Hey, how are you doing today? Welcome to another Q&A segment for Next Evolution Athletics. Hope you're having a good one. I got a really interesting nutrition question this week from one of my clients. And give you a bit of background. Dude's a young guy. He's an athlete. He trains really hard. But the summer's been a bit slower for him. He's been working a lot, so he hasn't really gotten the training that he's wanted to do this summer. It's just been super hectic for the guy. So he asked me a really interesting question. Yeah, I'll make sure I get this right. He goes, how do I stick to my nutrition plan when I still want to go out and party with my buddies? That's a really legitimate question. Okay. I know a lot of people, from sport performance to general population to rehabilitative to everything like that. And this is a legitimate question when you come to nutrition. It's a really slippery slope, for lack of a better term. So I'll give you my opinion on the subject, and then if you have any questions, fire away. So the first thing you want to understand is, what are your goals? Okay, what are the goals you're trying to accomplish with your nutrition and your training? Is it weight loss? Is it weight gain? Is it maintenance? This is a really important thing to understand when you first start asking yourself these questions. Like, oh man, I want to stick with my nutrition plan, but I still want to go out with my buddies and have fun. So it's depending on the individual. You have to understand that there's a lot of different factors. So first thing you want to understand is your goals. Second thing is, what are you training for? Okay. So what I mean by that is it athletic performance? Is this general health and fitness? Like what's our end goal? Okay. So if you have an athlete that wants to go out and party, you have a little more leeway the leaner they are with a nutrition program. But if you have a general population that live a relatively sedentary life, maybe they work out 3-4 times a week, but that's about it, then they don't have as much play. With an athlete, you got training, then you probably have field sessions, then you're doing a lot of other stuff like running, and you're just have a more active life. So you can get away with a little more play. And that's why when we're like, 15 to like 22, we can pretty much do whatever we want and get away with it. But when you start creeping that 25, 28 range, you got your degree, you got a job, everything starts to slow down a little bit. So that's the first thing I want to understand. Are you an athlete or a gen pop? Okay, so we'll look at the athletic perspective, and then we'll look at the general health. So the athletic perspective. Actually, let's look at the general health one first. So for the general health, generally what I say is, if we want weight loss and fat loss, we have to be in a caloric deficit. It's just that simple. You need to be in a caloric deficit. So if on Friday night you're going to go out with the boys and have some beer and some wings and stuff like that, then you have to understand that you're going to overconsume that one day. You're going to go over your calories that day. But at the end of the week, end of 10 days, we need to be at a caloric deficit. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. If you're going to have a couple beer and maybe some wings, it's generally not too bad. Maybe that day you don't have as many carbohydrates, you reduce your fat a little bit, and that way you kind of counterbalance the end. So if you really know what you want and you know what your calories are, you know what your macronutrients are, maybe you reduce your carbohydrates, fat that day, maybe your protein, depending on what you're having that night. And it should get a relative balance. It's nothing too wild or too crazy. So you can get away with a night where you have some beer and wings. Not a big deal. Okay. If you're going to go out on a bender, that's where things get really interesting. Okay. So if you're going to have like 10, 12 beer, a pizza, you're looking at a really, really, really calorically energy dense meal evening. Okay. So at the end of the day, we still need to be in a caloric deficit. Now, I'm not a fan of it because everything that has to do with performance and fat loss is negatively affected by a big bender once a week. It takes about 10 to 12 days hormonally to recover from one, and usually we only go 7 days before we have another one. So calorically, hormonally, it's a bit of a shit show, just being honest. Calorically, if someone is going to be like going out and they still need to be in a caloric deficit and there's no way they're going to not do it, then you've got to really reduce their calories throughout the week. You may have to have cycling of carbohydrates and calories. So maybe you have a Monday is like or Tuesday's like a higher calorie day, and then you have a medium calorie day, and then 2 low calorie days before you go into a super high calorie day on Friday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, yeah. So Friday you'd have a high calorie day, and then you have like 2 low calorie days. So it really depends on the cycling, because at the end of the day, say you need like 14,000 carbohydrates to be in fat loss in that one night, and it's not uncommon if you have 6 or 7,000 calories. That's half your weekly intake of calories in one night. So you're really going to get creative with your calories and your carbohydrates and your fats and your proteins for that week. So it's really challenging to stay in a deficit when you have a big party night. It's just what it is. Another trick you can use is increase your activity throughout the week if you know what's going to happen. If it's a one-off, you know, there's like a birthday party or a major event you have to go to, and you really want to increase your activity to burn some extra calories that week. And even that day, train really, really hard that day to utilize as much of the calories you're going to consume. What a lot of people don't understand is that 1 gram of regular carbohydrate is about 4 calories per gram. But 1 gram of sugar alcohol is about 7 calories, so it's almost double. So if your allotment for carbohydrates for the day is 100 carbohydrates, then generally you have to have like 50 grams of sugar alcohol for the numbers to get close to matching, maybe 55. So that's a big, big discrepancy. You know, that's a lot less. And we all know that there's a lot of calories in alcohol, especially when you get into the late nights. Because then you go into like pizza and nachos and stuff like that in the evening, maybe poutine. Yay. So it's really challenging. That's just for the general pop. For them to have that huge big night frequently, like once a week, and still maintain a deficit. You can do it, but it's a lot of hard work on the back end instead of having just maybe like 4 less beer, 5 less beer on the front end, I guess. So that's what I'd recommend for general population. If you're an athlete, man, you really got to time it. If you're in season, off season, it's a big difference. Like if you're in season and you go out in a big bender every weekend, and say you play like rugby and you guys play on Saturday and you're going on Saturday night, you know, if you feel like crap till Monday or Tuesday, you know, how do you think your training session on Monday and Tuesday is going to feel? Well, you start to come around on Wednesday, but now we're starting to bring the volume down a little bit. Maybe that's your last big day before you go into a little bit of a taper before the weekend, before you have another big game or a tournament. So you have to ask yourself what's more important. Is it having that extra 6 beer that night with the boys, or is it performing on the field? And that's really your choice. Like some people play rugby and sports socially, which is fine because that's, you know, rec league hockey, rec league rugby. The culture is to have a beer after the game, have a few beer after the game, not a big deal. But if you want to get to the higher levels, then you're going to have to make some sacrifices at the beginning of your career so you can enjoy the last part of your career. And I'm not saying like when you get to like in the show that you can just give it all up. I'm saying the tail end of your career when you've got 5-10 years of legitimate sport performance at the high level for a long period of time, maybe getting paid at your job, you know, not sacrificing that in the front end. Okay. Yeah, it's really interesting when you come to this, like as I mentioned earlier, everything associated with a big bender negatively affects performance and body composition and weight loss. You know, your testosterone goes down, your estrogen goes up, your cortisol goes up, your insulin goes up, your thyroid goes down, you're sleep deprived, your ghrelin and your leptin are all messed up, your gut bacteria, like there's everything negatively affected, everything that can be negatively affected by a big bender with processed foods and just lots of alcohol, throws it all off. So generally when you're starting out and you have like, say you're in the heavy double digits, like 20%, you probably don't have that much leeway, to be completely honest. You really have to out-train that, and it's very difficult. I've met very few people that can out-train a bad diet. Very, very few, like the less than 1% that can out-train a bad diet. Eventually, every athlete, every general population person has to take a step back, look at their nutrition and their lifestyle, and start making changes there. And the sooner you do it, the sooner you develop those habits at a younger age. Like, teens would be incredible. Early 20s to late 20s, much better. By the time you get in your mid 30s, if you're starting to develop these habits, it's really difficult because your lifestyle is set up around these cultural events with parties and stuff like that. So it's really difficult to change. But if you start this like in your early teen or your late teens, early 20s, by the time you get to say your early to mid 30s, it's easy and you can get away with a few nights here and there, and it's not so big of a deal. But if you do a lot of partying when you're younger and you really aren't physically active or your nutrition is really bad, it takes a long time. These are really hard habits to break. I know, I'm speaking from experience. It took me a very long time to really start to get a handle on nutrition. And it's just because I had to go study it and learn it and from some better coaches than me. And when you learn it, you kind of actually can't hide from it anymore. You can't claim ignorance. You can only claim arrogance. So that's that. I highly recommend understanding what your calorie intake is, what your macronutrient breakdown should be for what you want to accomplish. And then if you want to have a few beer, you adjust your calories around that. Okay? If you want to have a ton of beer, it's really difficult to combat that. Straight up honest. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm saying it's difficult. Okay? I hope that helps. If you guys have more questions, please feel free to comment or shoot me a message. I really appreciate them. These are really fun. I'm actually starting to enjoy these a lot more. Other than that, if you like what you see, please click and subscribe. Have a great day. Keep getting your strong on.